Welcome to the Level 1 Derivatives Summary video series. This video is a summary of the reading on swap markets and contracts. A swap is an agreement between two parties to exchange a series of future cash flows. Typically, one party makes a payment based on a random outcome such as LIBOR. The other party makes a fixed payment. Perhaps the most likely sort of swap to show up on your exam is a plain vanilla interest rate swap, and this is also very popular in financial markets. A plain vanilla interest rate swap is an interest rate swap in which one party pays a fixed rate and the other party pays a floating rate with both sets of payments in the same currency. For example, you have party A which borrows 100,000 from party B for 3 years at a floating rate of LIBOR, and party B borrows the same amount, same notional principal from party A for 3 years at a fixed rate of 5%. We need to show the cash flows for the first year assuming LIBOR is 5% at time t equal to 0. It's 6% at the end of period 1, which is after 6 months, and 7% over here. Now, how does this work and what is the terminology? The swap rate is the rate paid by the fixed rate pair. In our example, the swap rate is 5% because we say that the fixed rate pair is paying 5%. Obviously, the entity or the party paying the fixed rate is called the fixed rate pair. The other party which is paying LIBOR is called the floating rate pair. The settlement dates in this example are every 6 months. Settlement date is where you figure out who owes whom how much, and then a payment is made. With plain vanilla interest rate swaps, the settlement is a net settlement, and that's what we've just talked about. We net. Termination date in our example actually is period 6. Since it's a 3-year swap, settlement date every 6 months, so there are 6 periods. Each period 6 months, so we have 6 periods. Termination date will be 3 years after initiation. The tenor is the life of the swap, so at time t equal to 0, we'll say that the tenor is 3 years. The value of a swap at initiation is 0. This is like a forward contract or like a futures contract. Now, how much is paid by whom at the end of period 1? What you do is, you say the fixed rate pair needs to pay 5%. The floating rate pair needs to pay LIBOR at the start of the period. If LIBOR at the start of the period is 5%, which is the same, then the net amount is 0. What about the payment here at the end of period 2? So the fixed rate pair pays 5%. The floating rate pair pays 6%. Note that if the interest rates in the market are going up, then the fixed rate pair benefits because he's paying the fixed amount of 5% but receiving a higher rate. How much does he get? He gets the notional principal times the difference. So this is also, either you can think of it as a formula, but I prefer that you think of it logically. So notional principal into the rate differential, 6% minus 5%, but then divided by 2. Why? Because this is 180 days out of 360. So you do 180 over 360, which is 2. These rates are all annualized rates unless you are told otherwise. So A will pay B this much. The fixed rate pair will actually benefit. Then what is the payment made on settlement date number 3? Then it's based on 7%. So 7% minus 5% divided by 2 into the notional principal of 100,000. Plain vanilla interest rate swaps can be used to convert a floating rate loan to a fixed rate loan, and let's see that through an example. General Electric has borrowed from the Bank of America and is making floating rate payments, LIBOR plus 25 basis points. General Electric now wants to convert this into a fixed rate. So what can they do? They can go to JP Morgan, a derivatives dealer. So they have a big desk that deals with swaps, and GE makes a deal with JP Morgan where GE pays fixed at 6.2% and receives floating. So GE becomes the fixed rate pair and JP Morgan becomes the floating rate pair. Now look at what happens. This LIBOR is going to GE and LIBOR is paid by GE to Bank of America. So the LIBOR cancel out. The net effect is that GE is making a fixed payment of 6.2 plus 25 basis points. So net effect is GE pays a fixed rate of 6.45%. Next we talk about currency swaps, and we'll understand this through an example. A US company, Target, wants to expand in Germany and needs euro. Target is not known in Germany, so the cost of borrowing is high. What is the solution? Target issues bonds in dollars in the United States, and since Target is well known, the cost of borrowing here will be low. And then Target does a swap with Deutsche Bank, which is very well known in Germany. So Deutsche Bank can raise funds at a low rate in Germany. So Target does a currency swap with Deutsche Bank, where the 10 million raised in the US market is given to Deutsche Bank, and the equivalent amount in euro goes from Deutsche Bank to Target. And then every period, interest payments are made. So Target obviously pays its bondholders, but what is happening between Target and Deutsche Bank? Effectively, at initiation, Deutsche Bank borrowed dollars and Target borrowed euro. So every period, Target will pay interest in euro and Deutsche Bank will pay interest in dollars. And then at termination, the principal is again exchanged. Note that with currency swaps, the notional principal is indeed exchanged, but with plain vanilla interest rate swaps, the notional principal is not exchanged. The basic calculations are like this. At initiation, Deutsche Bank and Target swap the notional amounts, and then interest payments are based upon the agreed upon rates. In this particular scenario, they both agree to pay a fixed rate, and in level 2 you will learn how we determine these rates. Here at level 1, the rates are just given to you, and since they are semi-annual, we do 180 over 360. So it's the rate, it's based on 180 over 360, and it's based on the notional principal. So these are the interest payments made every period. After 5 years, the principal amounts are returned. When you do a currency swap, there are 4 scenarios. One is that both parties pay a fixed rate. The other is that one party pays fixed, other floating, other float, and the first one fixed, and final float. And again, this material will be covered in detail at level 2. The final kind of swap that you need to worry about is an equity swap. In an equity swap, at least one party pays the equity return. An equity return could be the return on a stock, it could be a stock portfolio or an index. The counterparty would pay an equity return, a fixed interest, or a floating rate. There are 2 important points to remember with regards to equity swaps. The party making the fixed payment could also have to make a variable payment, and we'll see that through an example. Also, when you have multiple periods, then the amount that needs to be paid is only known at the end of the period. Unlike interest rate swaps, where you know how much will be paid at the start of a period. So at the start of the period in an interest rate swap, you know who will pay whom how much at the end of the period. So let's look at this simple example. You manage a small cap portfolio worth 100 million. You are bearish about small cap stocks over the next 12 months and enter into a 1-year semi-annual pay equity swap with a dealer. You pay the return on a small cap index and receive 5%. So you are the index return payer and the counterparty is the fixed rate pair. And we are going to see that the fixed rate pair might need to make variable payments. The small cap index starts at 1000. So at time 0, the index is at 1000. And at the end of the first period, which is 6 months later, the index goes up by 10%. So how much will you pay? Since you are the equity index payer, you will pay 10%. How much do you get? You get 5% fixed, but that 5% is an annualized number. So on a 6-month basis, you get 2.5%. what is the net effect? You pay 10, get 2.5, so net effect is that you pay 7.5%. 7.5% of what? It is 7.5% of the notional principal, so this will be 7.5 million. Now you pay this. What about period 2? Now period 2, the index goes down by 18.2%. So now you will pay minus 18.2%. That means that you are actually getting 18.2%. And from the fixed part, you are getting half of 5%, which is 2.5%. So overall, you will get 20.7%. And this goes back to the point made earlier, where the fixed rate payer has to pay quite a lot if the index goes down. Both these points have been illustrated. So the fixed rate payer is making a variable payment when the index goes down, and the amount of payment is only known at the end of the period because the payment is based on the value of the index at the end of every period. How do you terminate a swap? A party might want to terminate a swap before its formal expiration. This could be accomplished in several ways. One party pays the swap value to the other, possible if both parties agree at swap initiation that such a transaction can be made, or you get into an offsetting contract, or there is a resale, but this is very infrequent because the contracts are very customized, so you can't just take your contract and sell it very easily. Or you engage in a swaption, which is an option to enter into a swap. When you create your initial swap, you also get into a swaption that allows you to get out if you want to. And I know you are tired of hearing this, but this also is covered in detail at level 2. So if you are excited about this material, make sure you pass, and then there is a lot more good stuff coming up. Structure of global swap markets. These are custom instruments over the counter, so a lot like forward markets. There is a network of dealers, largely unregulated, and credit risk is a concern because the party that is winning is the party that has the credit risk. And what do we mean by the party that's winning? Remember, if you are a fixed rate payer, when the rates go up, you are winning. But when will you get your money at settlement date? Is there a risk that the counterparty won't pay you? There is a risk. That risk is credit risk. The higher the amount that they owe you, the greater your exposure. So the greater the degree of credit risk. If you found this lecture helpful, then I'll be very grateful if you can do 3 things for me. Number 1, like this video. Number 2, like my Facebook page. And number 3, visit analystforum.com and there add my logo to your studying with profile. You can see this slide for help on how to do that. Thank you very much and good luck with your studies.